Hi everyone, this is Rochelle Rizzi, and I'm here today with Rob Dube, who is the author of Do Nothing and the co-CEO of imageOne. Welcome, Rob.
Hey, how are you? Good to see everybody. Good to see you, Rochelle.
I'm so honored to have you here today. I've known Rob for about a decade, believe it or not, Rob. I
Wow,
was
that went
thinking
by
back to
fast.
how we first met, and I think we might have been at a Zingerman's training or going through the Small Giants passport. And and I always admired you with all that you had going on. At that time, you had recently repurchased a business that you sold. And I was fascinated with how that came to be because what we had in common, even though I was, gosh, I don't know, 10 years ago, I mean, early 30s. um, I mean, I look back, I was such a young girl and I learned so much from you and all that all that culture meant for a growing business and for entrepreneurship. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about your true north story and what got you here and dive into the book a little bit.
Sure. Well, just I'll go back just a little bit and do a brief story about where things started and where they ended up as we are today. But my best friend and I started selling blow pop lollipops out of our locker in high school, and we stayed together doing little businesses, and then we started the business a business out of college. We ran it from 1991 until 2004, where we were approached by a company and ended up selling. We stayed on and ran it as a wholly owned subsidiary. And then what you had mentioned, we had repurchased it in 2006 as they had some executive changeover and were going in a different direction. As Joel and I started the company, we were very close friends, still are today, best of friends, brothers. I also got married right around that time, pretty early for many. My wife and I had our first child. By the time I was 25, I had started the business, gotten married, and we had our first child. And of course, you know, and many of your listeners who have started businesses, the first few years are not usually fruitful. And so we were on a shoestring budget, to say the least, and it was pretty stressful. And that kind of carried along with me over the years. And when we sold, I was very anxious, and I had tried some different things. I'd gone to therapy for a lot of years, very useful. And I'd been introduced at the time that we sold to meditation. Just through reading, I read I read about it in Time magazine, and one day I was pretty stressed out, and I just decided to give it a try. And I found it to be really useful and pretty simple. and and so that started a new journey for me, actually, of learning how to be in the present moment and not letting these stories and dramas that are going on in my mind sort of take me over. And so I really engulfed myself into what this meditation practice was all about. Wanted to be sure I was doing it right, and as it turns out, there's no way to really not do it right. And along the way, I felt better. I felt much calmer, much more at peace, much more capable, and I felt that I was a better leader. And every year I felt like I was just getting a little bit better. And I still have a long way to go, believe me. But I just felt like I was getting much clearer and much more patient and open and a much better listener. Um, it prompted some curiosity from some people. Meditation back then wasn't quite as in the front of things as far as wellness as it is today. And so some people would kind of pull me to the side and ask me some questions and things of that nature. One of the questions that people were curious about, those that knew, was that I was going on silent retreats that would usually last about 7 days. And there was a lot of curiosity from people around what that was like. And one day somebody had asked me the question, what do you do when you go on these retreats? Do you just sit around and do nothing the whole time? And I just kind of laughed and I said, well, it might seem like that, but it's kind of hard actually. And I said, but that's a really funny way of putting it. And he said, you ought to write a book about that and call it Do Nothing. And there you go. So I did end up taking my friend's friendly nudge, and I started writing this book about how meditation had been useful for me, and sort of uncovering some of the misconceptions about it, how it could be useful in business and as leaders, and also sharing stories of many other leaders that had used it or do use it and had used it quite successfully. And then finally, just the science around it. A lot of people have a lot of questions, and sort of that's an important component for them. And there's a lot of science behind it that help to get people kind of past that line to really give it a try. So.
Yeah, and I really, first of all, I've already mentioned I really admire you, Rob. You do have an aura of calm, and and that the way you show up just bleeds into the room, and it is so helpful. So I want you to know that you're practicing what you preach, and the way that you show up is just it always feels not just calm, but like pure love and joy. I just get that from you. So whatever you're doing is working. And I will say that I was trying to pull up I have the mobile version of your book, so everybody can see
Very
the
cool.
cover.
Thank you.
Do
Love
nothing.
it.
I was traveling this week and I didn't grab my hard copy, which I'm a paper girl. I love to read the book, but I've probably read that book 3 or 4 times now, and I keep it as a reference and a reminder on my desk because there are some real key points of how to practice meditation in there. The biggest hump for me has been making it a regular habit. I tend to say I need to meditate when I'm stressed versus being more proactive. And I think that's the key. Am I right?
You are not alone there. Yeah. And it is helpful, like any other habit that we have in our lives, to have a regular rhythm with it. Yeah.
And I do think, though, that what I'm most mindful of is when there's conflict, I ask myself questions of like, why does this matter? It has helped me be more empathetic and a better listener versus letting my ego drive the conversation, or even my mind getting away with myself of when I'm listening to someone being upset. Those feelings are real. That person has real feelings. How can I truly lead through this and not feel that I'm being attacked? If they have an issue with me, that I don't know, it just has helped me think about things in a bigger universal way of this is energy. I don't have to let this in, but I can still help. So I want to thank you for that, because the more I read the book and the more I try to practice, and I really do want to perfect it. It is a work in progress. But I'm really grateful for all the tips. What do you think is the most helpful when you talk to other leaders? What is some of the best advice you're giving them?
Well, first, I would encourage you and all the others that have a curiosity around it, or that are trying to get into some sort of rhythm with it, is do the best you can, and just let go of any sort of striving, because that's not really the energy that you want to have around it. So when you have time and you find the time, congratulate yourselves and celebrate that. but don't look for perfection. I know we're entrepreneurs and we're always striving to be the best and get better and grow. But in this case, let go and do what go with what your energy is sort of telling you. One thing that I have found useful over the years, and I talk a lot about, is something that I call the simple six. And these are 6 things in our life that we all think about and want to do a better job with, but for some reason we all struggle in one way or another with all 6. Now, there are 60 things in our life that we want to and need to do better with, but these are just 6 that I kind of came up with. And it starts with the meditation practice, and why that's important as its foundation is it allows us to bring the awareness, and you just talked about that in what you shared. It's stopping, it's pausing in that moment between stimulus and response, and being able to recognize what's going on in a millisecond. And that's what the meditation practice does, is it helps us become more aware moment to moment. And so the other 5, which will be no surprise to anybody listening, but they all work together. They're very interconnected to help us manage stress, manage our well-being, our moods, our lives in general, our energy. And those are sleep, nutrition, movement, connection, and gratitude. And so when you have your meditation practice as that foundation, when you're not getting enough sleep, you will recognize that sooner. And you will recognize what's happening maybe in the evening when we're exhausted and we just want to lay and veg and watch TV shows. And then it's 3 hours later, maybe we'll say half hour tonight, but I'm getting a good night's sleep because I feel that, I know that, I'm aware of what's happening. Nutrition is similar. What we eat certainly has an effect on all those things, our moods, our energy, all that kind of stuff. So it's really just pausing. And, before we, go after the snack or something that we know we probably shouldn't, we kind of pause and we just think about it for a second and then make the decision. Yes, no. How is this going to affect me later? How's this going to affect my sleep later? All those kinds of things. Movement, nowadays, as many people are working from home, you could be at your desk for hours and hours on Zoom video meetings or whatever the case might be. And we're not oftentimes moving. And so we're not suggesting that you have to go to a gym and do a big workout or anything of that nature. What we're suggesting is just make sure you move, make sure you get up, maybe go outside, go for a walk. Like that's the ultimate, getting out in nature, even if you live in a city, just being out in the fresh air. And everybody relates to this. It's nothing new. I know I'm not sharing any big news. It's just a reinforcement. But if you're sitting at your chair, you can go on YouTube and you can Google or you can search for chair movements or something, and you'll find like a 3-minute chair movement, and just do it. Just move your body around. Connection, obviously. You and I are connecting right now. We're over screen. We're in different states. It's remarkable what we can do, and it's not as easy to be around people physically as it used to be. And so in many cases, we have to really make an effort to do that. But even beyond this, and when we get past this time in our lives, the connection is really important, and to do our best to make a priority around that. But I would even say going beyond the connection where we're actually interacting, but maybe even thinking about sending a personal note to somebody that you haven't thought about in a while. This is huge. It's really beneficial for you because you're doing something really special and you're thinking about somebody really special. And then you put a stamp on that thing and you send it out, and then they get it. And I always like to ask the question, when you receive a personal handwritten note, what do you do with it? I'll ask you that. What do you usually do with a note when you receive it?
I keep it.
You keep it.
I will pin it up on my board, or I'll I have a special drawer of all of my handwritten things from my children, my significant other, even my ex-husband. All of that stuff I kept because the written word to me, for one thing, I'm a writer, so I really appreciate when people express their feelings in writing. And it just shows that they took the time. I would prefer that over anything else,
Yeah.
just words. I love it.
And so now you know, if you took time and wrote this handwritten note, doesn't have to be super, long or anything. This person that receives it will 90% of it. I don't think I've had a person who say, yeah, I just throw it away. They keep it. They have a place on their desk. They have a drawer. They pin it up. They keep it. That's the kind of impact. That's the kind of connection that you're going to make. And so, and then that last part is gratitude. And, that's one everyone knows, like, yeah, I need to do more of that. And of course, everybody, most of the time these days, people say, yeah, I ought to keep a journal, or, there's apps around that and things of that nature. Just all kinds of resources to do that. But, you can even keep it simple and just close your eyes in the morning, when you wake up, and just think of, one thing you're grateful for: your feet touching the ground and the sensation of your feet on the ground, and the fact that, you're fortunate enough to be able to have that sensation. And that alone can really start your day off in a really mindful way.
I love that. And before we got on the call, I said, "Oh, my lawn guy is here, and he's being very loud." And and you said the same thing. You have a lawn guy, and we both had to be rooted with, we're grateful we have a lawn guy. Our lawn is getting mowed, and we get to do this today. I was worried
Exactly.
about the sound, but if you focus on the gratitude piece, it does simplify
Yeah.
everything.
And when we take these 6 and we're trying to perfect them, and I'll actually say, let's take a step back and know that we won't perfect them. And using that meditation practice, that mindfulness practice as our foundation, you'll just stop and think about those 6 things and say, where am I today on a scale of 1 to 10? 1's the worst, 10's the best. And you're somewhere around 9 for some and 5 for others. And where you're lower, that's where you can just put your focus on today, or this week, or this month. And you'll just bring awareness. We aren't trying to set a goal to get to 9. You're just putting a number on it and being okay with whatever the number is, and just allowing that number to be your guide to the awareness of that, whichever one of those 6 or 2 or 3 or 4 of those 6 that you might be a little challenged with at this time in your life, because we are all challenged with every one of those at some point each and every day throughout our lifetime. So let's just accept it.
Yeah, no, good point. And I have painted the picture of who you are when you enter a room. I am curious what happens when you have a bad day, because you are now, this is a practice that I'm sure you have taught your employees, you've brought into your business, you show up with your colleagues and your peers, and, even people like me where we network in the same groups. So what happens when Rob has a bad day? What do you do?
So I like to share a quick story about my grandmother. We called her Meme. And when I was young, and I would see her and I would say, Meme, how are you? How's it going? And she would kind of, look at me and smile, and she'd say, oh, good days, bad days. And I used to think, what does that mean? Why does she always say good days, bad days? And she's no longer with us, but later on in life, I realized what she meant. And that is that days are made up of good and quote unquote bad. But really all it is life. And so we like the feeling of good days. So we like to strive for those days. And when we have those days that we have the term bad associated with, we don't like that feeling. And so we push and push away. How can I get out of this bad feeling? How can I get out of this? And really, it's all about just acceptance. and knowing that this is just life. And to the degree that we can have some level of acceptance with what is happening in this moment, right here, right now, we're better set up to cope with it. And I like good days as much as the next person. I like the feeling, but I've learned not to grasp onto it because I know that it won't always be that way. And I don't like the feeling of bad days any more than the next person. And my default will be to want to push it away and get out of it. But using mindfulness as a foundation, you can stop in those moments between stimulus and response, and you can kind of reset, and you can maybe bring some perspective and understand that this is just what's happening in this moment. It isn't necessarily good. It isn't necessarily bad. It just is. And once we realize that it just is, we become a bit more steady in our lives, and we can flow with whatever's going on. And I think at that point, it would be fair to say that we're set up better and more capable to go about the decisions that we have to make in life, or whatever it is that has to happen, whatever in that moment is, we're better set up for it.
Great advice. And I was thinking about the mindfulness and that time to respond or to pause between the response. I fully admit that meditating for me, I have never reached the transcendental level. Can you describe what that is?
No, I can't, because you and I won't really probably most likely ever reach it, because we don't have days upon days to meditate and really hone in on the practice. We live ordinary lives, and an ordinary life is, anybody who's going along and has to go to a job and has those kinds of responsibilities. So our life's work is not meditating all day, every day. And some people, that is their life's work. And so they're able to transcend their minds in a way that maybe just that might not quite be as accessible for us in this life. And so the idea here is that we can just practice as much as our lives allow us to. And I always like to use an analogy around sports and music, because many people can easily relate to this. So you look at the best athletes, the best professional athletes who are at the top of their game, so to speak, or the best musicians, same thing. And what makes them different than all the other athletes and all the other musicians around them? Well, it's fair to say it's practice. So let's use a basketball player. The best basketball players who have ever been in the world, they're the ones that are in the gym late into the evening, and they're shooting their free throws or their three-point shots over and over and over again. The best pianist in the world, they are honing in on their craft. They have blisters on their fingers. They are playing these pieces over and over and over again. And then when they're on the stage and the curtain goes up and there's thousands and thousands of people watching, whether it's an athletic event or a concert, and the concert pianist sits there and they don't have to think. They're not the least bit intimidated. They know exactly what they do, and they just do it. As an athlete, the game's on the line, the crowd's against them, all the pressure in the world, you and I are watching and thinking, oh my gosh, all this pressure. The athlete's not thinking about that. They've hit that shot 100,000 times. No problem. They know exactly what to do. Similarly, with a meditation practice, our big game is every moment of our lives. That's our big game. And it's how we show up to those around us. It's how we show up. Actually, I should take a step back and say it's first how we show up for ourselves. And we don't self-critique ourselves to where we get ourselves down. And then how that translates into how we show up for others. And can we be lifter-uppers on a daily basis, as opposed to what I like to call dragger downers. You know, those are the people when you see them and you say, well, how's it going? And they say, oh, yeah, I don't know. I mean, this and that and the other. And you just all of a sudden the energy just starts to, come down. And I feel for people in that position. And where we can make a difference is we can come in and we can be a lifter upper and really bring energy to the universe, to those around us, people we know and love, and people that we don't even know who they are, and whatever their situation is. And so with our meditation practice, I always encourage people, and if you want to go on a life journey to be transcended, by all means, please do that. But as ordinary people with ordinary lives, do your best to find some moments to just sit and focus on your breath, which brings you to the present moment, and know that your mind will be racing for, if you're doing it for 10 minutes, plan on it racing, your mind racing for 9 minutes and 50 seconds of it. And just know, if you can get that 10 seconds where you're focused on your breath, and it might be 2 seconds here and 1 second there and 3 seconds over here, you are working on honing in awareness when you're in an awakened state and you're going about your day.
Well, that's refreshing to hear, because I do try to perfect it every time. I get frustrated.
Let go.
Sorry, the lawn guy is right on it.
Much gratitude to the lawn guy.
I know.
Right?
Let me meditate right now while we get through this.
That's right. Actually, I will share. I've learned this from many meditation teachers that have taught me, which is we can use noises in our lives, especially ones that seem disruptive to us, as a way to come to the present moment. It's a great exercise. And so have you ever noticed where you could be like so deep in thought, and then all of a sudden something jolts you? It could be the lawn person, it could be the doorbell, or your phone all of a sudden buzzes and you're like deep in thought, and then you're like, oh, and it's like you were over here, you were way someplace else. All of a sudden that noise brought you to the present moment. And so that's a way of honing in on awareness. Your breath is that anchor in the same way when you're sitting in meditation. Sometimes when I'm sitting in meditation and my mind is racing, actually I'll hear a noise, and that will bring me, instead of my breath, it will actually bring me back to the present moment. And I'll remind myself, oh, okay, focus on your breath, in and out, and just follow that path. And then the mind starts to go and you repeat. So we have much gratitude to our lawn person.
I know.
Today.
I have all the props today.
That's right. It was perfect.
Good. Thanks for gracefully getting us through that. So that was perfect. I know that you must have some resources, and I want you to talk a little bit about your retreat before we hang up. So
sure.
Talk about that, and then I don't know if you have resources available on your website, but that would be awesome.
Yes, you can find everything in terms of resources that I have to offer at donothingbook.com. The retreat is planned for August 1st to the 5th of 2021. And this is a 5-day journey, which does involve some silence. And but we bring in several teachers that will both inspire and instruct those that are in attendance on just the sort of how to get yourself set up properly on a regular basis. Again, there's no doing this wrong when it comes to meditation, but it's just the basics, I guess, for lack of a better word. And of course, we sit and we practice, and we do some other mindfulness exercises while we're there, all with the idea that when you go back and you leave and you enter back into the real world, our ordinary lives, that you can use all of these tools that you've learned about as you make your way through, the day-to-day challenges and celebrations that we all have.
That's awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I really hope that I can can join the retreat someday very soon.
I
know
know you will.
cancel this year because of COVID, and it is tentatively rescheduled for next year in August.
Yep.
And I would love for everybody to keep that location in mind, because you mentioned to me that they had been affected by the fires.
That's right. It's in Colorado, and they've had some fires up there, and it did reach the property, and there's smoke damage, as I mentioned to you before we were talking, and in all the buildings and some of the buildings, but not the critical ones, luckily, but some of the buildings actually did burn down. So they will be in a rebuilding process and a cleanup process. So we have our fingers crossed for them. But as I mentioned to you, Rochelle, before we got started, the retreat center, in some ways, is very set up for this kind of thing, because as we all know, with what we're going through now, and as life brings us challenges as we move forward, it's all uncertain, and there is no certainty. And actually, that's quite beautiful when we embrace that and let go of wanting to control it all.
Yeah, great advice for right now. It has been quite a year for everybody. It's epic. Absolutely. I thought of one thing before I let you go. How, as an entrepreneur and a leader of the company, are you incorporating this into the culture of your business?
Mm-hmm. Well, we talk mostly about the simple six. And so, that we have an imageOne University class around the simple six. And our hope is that we can just provide useful tools to our team members that help them have some focus on those six things and try to get to some level of balance and peace. And we also have an annual survey that we do that is a thoughtful survey, meaning those that take it, our team members. It's not a quick, boom, boom, boom. It's something where they really need to take a step back and think a bit about their lives, and maybe even think about some things that are challenging, and that helps us understand better where the collective mindset of our team is, and what kind of resources that we need to look into and bring forth in the coming year. And so those are two ways that we share that with our team.
That's great. I think those are very good tactics for people to try to practice and build a great culture, which I think most people who are following this are focused on people and leading with love. And Rob,
yes,
you really brought a lot of great things to the table today. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you.
I'm grateful for you, Rochelle. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Have a great day, everybody.